Hello and welcome to Feedback for the week of February 8th, 2010. In case you were asleep through a year, like Rip Van Winkle or something like that. And you're like, oh no!
You chose just now to tune in.
Yeah, what are all these people with
fortunate.
microphones and headphones doing on my internet? Well, it's us.
Solved.
It's Feedback. We're going to chat about some stuff today. We are joined by our illustrious crew again, Patrick Klepek, Abby Heppy. Excuse me for that there, and Jake Gaskill.
Had a hiccup
Fresh
on that.
Fresh from the Bioshock 2 review.
I
which seems to have the same effect as Dante's Inferno review with our readers, and we'll get to that a little bit later on.
Sexy fun time commentary.
Exactly. But let's talk about news. No, Mass Effect 2.
What?
It came out, but it's not going to leave quietly.
No.
No
game that's 57 hours long leaves that quickly.
It's the General MacArthur, the opposite of General MacArthur of video games.
Yeah, and Electronic Arts held a financial call this week where they, at the very end, dropped a seemingly mysterious bomb saying that something far-reaching from Mass Effect is coming in early 2011, which means sometime between January and March. Was no elaboration on what that is, if it's an expansion. They also have a Dragon Age title coming out for consoles and handhelds sometime in the fall.
But no PC. They didn't confirm PC on the Dragon Age.
No, they did come there for PC too.
They did.
And so, but it's unclear what exactly that means. Like, does Dragon Age Awakening is coming out as a retail product in addition to being a download. So is this something similar for Mass Effect, or is it possible that now that they have everything built, that somehow by next March they could finish
3.
Mass Effect?
Yeah. We do know that BioWare was in pre-production somewhere during the development of Mass Effect 2. Now, granted, Mass Effect 2 was in development somewhere in the, it was in pre-production somewhere in the development of the original Mass Effect. I don't know. What do you think is the likelihood of this, Abby?
I think it's likely. I mean, they already seem to have the game kind of down to a formula. I mean, this one, it just worked so smoothly. It seemed pretty perfect. I mean, if you're just building on that engine and those, I don't know. It seems possible.
I mean, Metal Storm, just because it works perfectly, I'll mention Metal Storm 98. I don't think it's impossible to see Mass Effect 3 within a year. I mean, they've essentially perfected most of the game mechanics, so now it's just a matter of just rendering to the end of the story.
But that's still a lot of games.
I know. That's the thing, is that's a lot of scribbling of dialogue trees. I've no idea how much of the development time is taken on that and how much of that has to be done before they can start doing the animations and everything to go along with it.
I'd be very excited to see it come at the beginning of next year.
Well, that's the thing, too. I mean, it's been 3 years since the first one. So, I mean, 3 years down to 1 year. Do people really...
That's
and also,
quick.
if you're a huge fan of the game, do you really want a new one so fast?
Yes.
Do you want this? Do you want to?
Yes.
Really? Like, I would think you'd want to chew on it a little bit, but
I'm going to chew quite a bit within a year, but I mean, there's just so much that made me so giddy and happy about playing that game. That
I assume we'll have DLC in between now and
That's what I mean,
Now,
too.
that's my only concern. Be this DLC or substantive DLC or a new game. Does this, give you any concern about how much robust DLC we're going to see between now and this far-reaching thing?
Well, they were pretty quick for Dragon Age to put out something that is apparently rather a large expansion.
At
on
$40,
it.
you're essentially implying there is a lot of content in this.
Granted, that game has been in development for 5-6 years.
That's true.
But there's also a very easy way to do, I'm just say easy, but to do DLC that doesn't actually affect the main storyline. You have so many planets to explore and so many places to go. You don't necessarily need something that drives the narrative forward.
There's a lot in that codex that does have anything to do with the main plot.
I mean, if you read the descriptions of all the planets when you're mining them, I mean, there's some really interesting stuff there to work with.
Let's listen to what our user Lyric or Lear1C says. I don't know.
I totally read on Xbox.
I'm not
and I read
hooked on
people's out like
phonics,
that.
but I don't know if I may have to start mainlining. The only thing far-reaching could really mean, if you think about it, is making the game go multi-platform. Think about it. Far-reaching, they want the game to reach as many people as they want, right?
You, sir, are reading way too much into somebody's word choice.
Well, I mean, the PlayStation 3 version, we think, has to be out there. I mean, it's just that much more, revenue. And, obviously, you can really, strengthen the brand before Mass Effect 3 if you get it onto the PlayStation 3.
I mean, I think Mass Effect on the PS3 is inevitable. It's just a matter of we're not privy to the contract negotiations that have gone on in terms of this franchise. But, there is now that they have Dragon Age running on PS3, there's really no reason that it's not a technical limitation. It's a matter of things behind closed doors
Yes,
that's
exactly.
stopping Mass Effect from appearing.
I think that the reading into the words is a little silly, but I think it's very possible that would be a PS3 version.
I mean, I guess now you listen to a lot of these calls, which I think it's worth pointing out are just moments of great interest interspersed with some of the most unendurable snooze fest, just sort of financial records.
Non-GAAP. I don't even know what any of those things mean.
GAAP,
even
General American Accounting Procedures.
Thank you.
Yes,
Wow.
I used to be a banker.
Yeah, that's right. Adam was a banker.
I'll just you can give me a live reference live blog as I'm listening to.
Yeah,
these
one of these
calls.
days I will. I'll sit there and do quick ratios so that you're like, wow, I've learned nothing in the course of this.
Well, the thing that was interesting about it, the thing that caused a little bit of confusion was that uncharacteristically EA released their entire release calendar, with the exception of a handful of games, until March 2011. Now, normally you don't do that. I mean, they had things listed as vague as just action title to be announced, console title to DLC to be announced, and that's not normally how companies operate. And so they had mentioned Dragon Age, a game coming out in the fall, and didn't mention Mass Effect. And so there was some speculation over whether an executive had just sort of misspoke and meant to say Dragon Age, but then EA did get back to me and said, no, there's something coming for Mass Effect and Dragon Age. And I'm just surprised that, BioWare's also said that they're going to be announcing more games this year. Just it's incredible how much that studio is accomplishing.
How big is their team up there?
Well, it's a large building. It is, I mean, with all due respect to everyone over at BioWare, it is from the exterior one of the least attractive buildings I've ever seen a dev studio house inside. It's this kind of Orwellian concrete structure that has a hotel and some other things, inside of it. But it is a large place. I mean, they could, and obviously the Austin team working on the Old Republic isn't even in that building. They're down in Austin. That's why I called them the Austin team. What I wanted to get to, Patrick, is have you ever seen executives use sort of metaphorical speak, such as far-reaching? And it sounded like they were using it in such a way as to get us to want to read into it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it was purposely, but I think that was more just to be purposely vague. I don't, I've met John Shepard a number of times. I don't infer that he was wanting us to look at far-reaching as that. I think we're just to imply there's something big coming for Mass Effect.
Now, I should assume it's somehow tied into Halo Reach and it's going to be squad-based Mass Effect.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
That's a natural extension.
Yeah. it just only makes sense. Well,
your new squad mate is Master Chief.
Boom.
There we go.
Obviously, E3 is coming up. I have a feeling that if there really is something this substantive, we are going to learn about it there.
Sure.
Which means that Abby and I have to be getting on the phone within the next 2 weeks to deal with this. Now, the other thing I wanted to chat about is they also talked about Dead Space 2 coming in it sounds like the first quarter of 2011.
Yeah, it sounds like it's coming sometime between January and March. And so, I mean, I think that's a little disappointing to most people. I think that was something we kind of expected to come in the fall. But that, this is... EA is maybe learning a lesson, moving a franchise out of the fall quarter that Dead Space will do fine, and it will do better than the original did, because I think a lot of people that's a word of mouth game, and it's done
and
very
it
well
did
since.
very well on rental and used sales.
And the one thing that probably explains that is, in addition to a Dragon Age game coming sometime in the fall, they confirmed that Epic Games collaboration with People Can Fly, which is a Swedish studio, is going to be a shooter. And that is coming this fall, and that is coming as a collaboration between Epic and People Can Fly, which probably moves any speculation that Gears of War 3 is coming anytime this year completely out the window. But I think that's between Crysis and whatever they've got cooking with Epic, EA has
that's
an
actually a
interesting
couple
fall.
of shooters, and they have Medal of Honor. I mean, that's potentially 3 shooters that they have coming out in 1 year. I mean, I think even one of those, Crysis, I'm going to put my money on, is going to see itself in 2011. I thought also with the news of Dead Space coming out when it does, it shows their comfort now with that first quarter. I think 2 million copies of Mass Effect 2 sold in a week and a half.
We'll see how Battlefield does too.
Approaching. I have a feeling the Battlefield Bad Company 2 is going to do very, very, very good numbers.
Well, I again, because how much I play Modern Warfare, all I hear people saying in that game now is, God, they can't patch this, and every time they patch it, there's something new that comes up, and I've noticed it because it's making me crazy. And everybody's like, God, I can't wait till Battlefield comes out.
Is it worse than the first one though?
It's so bad. It's so bad.
It's taking Infinity Ward a lot longer to get around to.
Yeah, and I think they just patched the PS3 and PC, and they're still waiting on the Microsoft cert. I think on 2 patches. I know one is the
cargo
package.
delivered care package. Yeah.
and it's a disaster. And I think at this point, people are looking for something else to play until they get their together and patch everything.
And everything we hear about Bad Company 2 is that it's excellent.
It's really cool. Yeah.
They could be in a prime position to really
it.
take over.
I know that they were trying to write off the rest of their FYE for 2010, but I think they might actually get a nice little 1-2 punch here
They
with
also
Battlefield
had
and Mass
beta
Effect.
for it, which is probably what everybody who's releasing a massive shooter should do.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Now, let's move on to our second story, which it ties in with Dead Space somewhat. One of the reasons I believe that Dead Space did not perform as well in its initial sales was there was that Fallout 3 game that was happening right around the same time of its launch, and I think it just clobbered it. And now, this year, it sounds like we got our first look at Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah, Fallout New Vegas, which is by far my most anticipated game of this year. I will immediately get excited for anything Fallout related at this point because Bethesda really won me over with 3. And yes, we have a couple of details coming out from a bunch of magazine covers that have been hitting worldwide. Now, one of the first things says that you're not going to be a Vault Dweller, but you will meet a Vault Dweller so they can give you a Pip-Boy so they can keep the sort of constant through the series. The other thing is that the game follows the plot of sort of New California Republic versus Caesar's Legion versus New Vegas residents. And the interesting thing is that Las Vegas was apparently completely or relatively untouched during the war that occurred in Fallout's narrative. So essentially, Las Vegas had very little trouble coming back into modernity after the bombs dropped.
You have to make the trek out there. It's out in the middle of the desert, and you're like, well, I could just go to the closer city.
You think about the Donner Party, and you're like, I don't want to have to eat other people on my way to Vegas.
Yeah.
But in the trailer, you saw all the lights.
Yeah, no, it's up and running.
Yeah, they said the Hoover Dam is providing them with power.
That's what I assumed. Aha, I was right.
And I think that's really interesting. Like they're going to be able to have an interesting contrast between instead of just Fallout 3. I'll admit, once I was playing for 4+ hours in one sitting, like the drab setting can sort of just wear on you. And I think this can provide such a high contrast to a wasteland setting, and then also to something vibrant and modern.
Yeah, that's why it was so exciting when you reach the place that has all the trees and the
exactly. It was so different.
Well, Abby and I were also talking that what could be very different about this game than Fallout 3 is because these massive casinos are somewhat intact and they have electricity. Could we be seeing finally a Bethesda-oriented game kind of focus on interior settings rather than kind of the vast wasteland of Oblivion or of Fallout 3.
And that's always the kind of the drabbest part of Fallout 3 was anytime you went in a building, it was just same quarter after same quarter.
Yeah, but here there's a lot of potential. I mean, you look at the interiors of the casinos as they are now when you go out to Vegas, and they're kind of spectacular with lion cages in them and ridiculous stuff. They could really make some interesting interior
And if you think about it, if you're going to have a blown-out world, once you leave the Strip, I don't know. I mean, there isn't. I mean, in terms of the real estate, how much more of suburban Vegas are we going to want to be traipsing around in, even in Fallout 3?
That's true, but it also, Fallout 3 always has some sort of UFO joke in there, and then I'm sure Area 51 is going to be climbing around there somewhere, which I'm sure will be a pretty awesome subquest. And one of the things that's interesting is that they've taken the sort of desert setting and they're introducing a hardcore mode, which doesn't appeal to me too much, but I think a lot of players, when they were responding to the feed post, were really excited. So the hardcore mode makes it so that players are required to drink water to stay alive, ammo has weight, and healing isn't an instant process. So you have to be much more calculated about how you play the game. And which is, I think that's, Obsidian is developing this game, and they have a lot of team members that worked on 1 and 2, and I think I think we're going to see clear moves that Fallout 3 has established Fallout for new kind of players, maybe the ones that didn't really get into Fallout 1 and 2, but that Obsidian knows ways to play to their base, and they're going to find ways that if you loved those old games, they're going to find little ways to make it more attractive to you and kind of bring back some of that.
Now,
I drank enough water during the regular thing anyway. So
you're probably already hydrated.
I'd probably be okay with that one.
Now, VATS is also getting an overhaul, or
it's not getting an overhaul. Yeah, I think one thing that people should, based on what I've seen of the different magazine covers, is to keep your expectations in check. Obsidian is largely taken what Bethesda laid down for Fallout 3 and just kind of building upon it. So there's going to be tweaks, there's going to be some changes, but anything related to an actual overhaul of how the gameplay works is coming in Fallout 4 sometime down the line.
Can we go to our user?
Now our user Quanstan.
That's close enough.
I like that. I wish they made the combat a little more like Fallout 1 and 2. Although the VATS is super awesome in Fallout 3, I didn't find it very challenging at all. Hopefully this hardcore mode sounds awesome, but I do agree with Shinsky24. I wish you could target crotches like in the first game. Yeah, I mean,
Well,
legitimate
yeah,
criticism.
exactly.
Legitimate criticism.
now, do super mutants have genitals?
See, that was my first question because that should be a weak spot.
Yeah, but I mean,
Critical
where
hit
do they
every
come from?
time.
Launch the task force.
I mean, but then that means that they're super mutant babies. I mean, I think that's
It's
the
a
whole
deep
thing.
rabbit hole.
The minute
Yeah.
the crotch kind of becomes a zone, it
just
starts
because
to.
they have genitals doesn't mean they can reproduce. I don't.
Plus
I
they're
don't-
But
radiated.
then why do they have genitals?
I'll send a
Like,
comment.
hey,
I'll-
I'm
You could be
bored.
impotent and have genitals.
I'm gonna send a comment out to Boner Jam. I feel like he's an
What?
expert on
What?
the subject.
Come on, it's not
and
wrong.
He'll get
Boner
back to
Jam,
us.
well, yeah,
and
we'll
we'll
obviously
visit
know.
this at a later time.
Now, this is interesting. I assume Quan Stan is not of the group that really resented.
He's kind of in the middle.
What Fallout
Yeah.
3 was, but I guess VATS did not make the game harder by any stretch of the imagination. But I guess I was always
They
curious.
made it a lot easier.
Yeah, but
Except for my friends who didn't realize that you could target bats more than once each time. A lot of people I know
That
played through the
really?
game like that. Yeah.
Wow.
or that you have a home somewhere in.
Oh
in-
yeah.
Oh, I'm living out of my mailbox somewhere near those fire ants.
I love the stories of people who just couldn't figure out how to play that game. They're my favorite.
But I guess that wasn't a game where I was necessarily yearning for like a huge challenge because it just I love the exploring. I love
Yeah.
seeing myself level up to the point that with my hunting rifle, I got 3 headshots in a row on 3 super mutants. And I felt like I was the baddest ass guy in the world. I mean, this wasn't a game that was I thought crying out for. I need challenge for it to justify
And I think
itself.
they're recognizing there were people that wanted
Yeah.
that, so we're going to give you something completely ridiculous that, I think I would be upset if those things were coming as added complications to my experience.
Ammo having weight sounds just absolutely devastating. Cumbersome.
I know. I'm like thinking back towards my inventory, and I'm like, ooh, that I would have to rearrange a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of inventory management.
I've been
I'm-
making a lot more stuff at my house.
But it's cool it's there, and I think that's an
Yeah.
interesting concession to the hardcore RPG crowd that this series is so rooted in, but allowing it to continue unabated elsewhere.
Now, do you have any idea how long Obsidian has been working on this game?
No, we don't. We haven't really. I mean, they were working on it while Fallout 3 was finishing up. So I mean, it's looking like Obsidian is getting a full 2 years to put this together. And the other interesting thing that comes out of this is that what is Bethesda working on? They're now working on their MMO. That's being worked on in a separate studio. They haven't said too much about Elder Scrolls, but we would be at the cycle now where potentially we could get a Bethesda game this fall.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to see Elder Scrolls. Obviously, Bethesda, with their new acquisitions of id and everything else, actually have a fairly strong
I would
lineup
say
of
next
games.
year.
I mean, my assumption is that Fallout 3 is utilizing tech out of Elder Scrolls 4. That this is around the time when they would revamp an engine,
Right.
Which is going to add a year, if not 2 years, onto a Bethesda game.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe we should consider Brink our Bethesda game. Like they're bringing out 2 sort of studio developed games while they, I mean, it's good for a developer that is normally on a 2-year cycle. We saw what happened with games like Resistance 2, like what happens when you stick to the very focused cycle
Yeah.
and just stepping back a little bit and having some more time.
Well, the only
That's
time we
not
ever
bad
had
thing.
a 2-year cycle from Bethesda was in between Elder Scrolls 4 and Fallout 3. 'Cause,
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Oblivion to Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind to Oblivion was those were several years. So let's also talk about this. This is more like get out the horn, play some taps. A third story of the week.
So Microsoft is dropping the Xbox Live infrastructure that they had developed for Xbox One. The main implication from that is that you can't play Halo 2 anymore as of April 14th.
Is anybody
online.
playing anything else?
No, they are technically charting on a list that Microsoft puts out. But this is something I reported on last year, was that the whole reason there's like friends cap and
Right,
other limitations to the service that they haven't really talked about. But in discussions I've had privately with Microsoft, they've said there are a lot of things we can't do because Xbox Live One's infrastructure in there, and we don't want to piss off the Halo 2 fans because those guys are what made us. And so you want to keep those guys happy, but it sounds like whatever they're trying to do, maybe it's Natal related, maybe it's other media. Eventually, something had to give, and I was told that if people were demanding it enough, they were going to do it. So
Couldn't they
now it's
release
happening.
Halo 2 on Xbox 360?
Absolutely. They could
arcade?
a downloadable multiplayer only Halo
that
2.
sounds.
Because I am so excited about this. Because I want my friends cap. I want it lifted.
Okay, Jake, humor me. How many friends do you have on Xbox Live?
It's pathetic. I have probably 20 or so.
I love you.
Yeah.
No, good,
Yeah, that's
good,
it.
good. So I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
I think I have 12. No, I think I have 7.
See, the thing is, I totally understand the argument and the point that this is sort of a minority issue, but in this day and age of social networking, like to have any sort of weird friends cap is unfortunate, and I hate removing people I know. And as someone that doesn't play a whole lot of multiplayer, it's odd that I have 100 people, but I treat Xbox Live sort of like a Facebook. I like to boot it up and see what all my friends are doing, see where they're at in Bioshock. Like, are they ahead of me yet? And so I understand why people get all angry about this point, but I don't know. I want it to be lifted. So
no, and I understand that. I also think that I'm all for progress, and so we do at some point need to say goodbye to things like Halo 2 and brute force, which I think you could play online.
Do you know what some of the other limitations on Xbox Live because of the original Xbox are?
No, I mean it sounded more like far-reaching where they want to take it if they want to do any of those large implications. I mean, who knows that? I mean, maybe it's stuff like we were talking about, like capture services for games, like stuff like that. Just they didn't think about that when they made Xbox One, and because of that carryover for the 360, that they kept those games intact and playable, that just they've had limitations and now they're getting rid of them. So I think a year from now, we'll all just not care.
Yes, exactly. It's like backwards compatibility on the
exactly.
PS3. It's and not with a good segue. We're going to go into our game of the week, which is Bioshock 2.
Yay! Of which I had 2 dreams of last night.
I know, that's terrifying.
Two separate dreams.
2 separate dreams. At one point, woke up to go to the bathroom, and I swear I heard the little sister crying.
Really?
More so
I was playing until 3:30 in the morning.
Is it your girlfriend?
I like the idea that you were wearing a cap that said Big Daddy on it. That was your dream.
I didn't mean that to be mean or anything.
My girlfriend weeping in the corner.
Crying in the corner.
Why am I still here?
Before we get to what you said, Jake, about the game and your wonderful review that is up on the site, g4tv.com. This game, I think, has been very anticipated by. I've definitely seen everyone talk about it on our website, and I think in the press there was a great deal of skepticism, just given it seemed to have a longer, production cycle than was expected. It also was kind of hidden from view for quite some time.
Multiplayer worried people.
Four different teams working on it at once.
Trying to top what was like game of the year for everyone.
Exactly, and a game that didn't cry out narratively for a sequel, but
which is so rare.
I know. It is strange. I mean, I have to hand it to them. I think Bioshock was never, ever developed with an idea that it would be anything more than just Bioshock. And that doesn't really happen in this day and age in the game industry.
Nor is the story even developed to the very end. Like that, a lot of that game is a happy accident. And that's why people love it so much.
Yeah. Now, Jake, obviously we were skeptical about this game. It may not be as good as the original Bioshock, but no, it is not terrible by any stretch of the imagination.
It is not. I know it's a 4 out of 5. But it's still pretty good. No, it's fantastic. If you love Bioshock, it has that same. The atmosphere is fantastic. One of the things in the first one that drove a lot of people was just the environment. Like I love just living in that world was enough for me. Like I was super interested in finding out about Ryan and Fontaine and Atlas and the whole story of Rapture. But I also was kind of like, I'll get there because I'll just want to see what's around the next corner, and that's enough for me. And this time around. Rapture, we kind of know what to expect from Rapture. We know what it's going to look like, the style, the design, everything. So this time I was really pulling for something, kind of risky with the story. And it just never went there. They kind of tease it. The most painful part is that they kind of tease it right in the beginning. The opening kind of shows you what could have been if they had kind of committed to that idea of pre-Bioshock. Like the Rapture before.
When Rapture was wonderful, it hadn't fallen yet.
Before it fell, and the first part has a great kind of shining party atmosphere to it. Which
it just have an amazing opening. That game sets a pretty incredible tone in the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, and then from there, all I kept thinking about was I wanted to play that. I wanted to see for the first part of the game if it just opened on a gorgeous, perfect Rapture. Would have been such a shock.
That would have been amazing. Yeah.
It didn't have to be the whole game, but if you could have actually been in there for a couple of minutes.
Then it would have set up. You could have met, Lamb. You could have met some of those characters that are going to show up later, and you would have had a kind of connection with them. And not only that, you would have a connection to what Rapture was. And a couple of characters show up again, obviously, Ryan and stuff. But to see them before would have been awesome to set up their relationships. because then you can relate to them not just in the past but in the future.
No, it is funny. We had, at one point, thought this was going to be a prequel, and I don't know how much that was actually seriously considered by the dev team in terms of this game.
Well,
but,
it became the multiplayer.
right,
The
exactly.
multiplayer.
I mean,
that's the narrative hook of the multiplayer is that it's set during the Civil War, but it almost sounds like, to a certain extent, a lot of us were kind of hoping for the flipping of that to be as part of the Civil War.
Now, one of the things, though, I have to say is that there are elements of this game that I feel did improve upon the original Bioshock, and I think it's there in the combat. You know,
Absolutely.
I still go back and forth. If my original playing of Bioshock, I wasn't as adept at the combat because I was scared all the time.
I can probably address this one. In the original Bioshock, it was very, very easy to get through the game, pretty much using Incinerate and the Electro bolts. Why? Oh,
Close
God.
enough.
Yeah,
Wacky electro name.
You know, but if you used those two, it was fairly easy to get through. You know, once you were getting the different ammunition, and you didn't necessarily need to experiment as much.
Yeah,
and
electricity plus electric bullets in the shotgun pretty much took down anything.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you weren't in as many like heavy combat situations where there were multiple enemies and big rooms, which this one has. It's much more combat oriented. But you will do significantly better if you experiment with all of your plasmids and you start playing around with different combat techniques, which was a big selling point in the first one, but maybe didn't come to fruition as much as it does in this one. At the same time, I kind of like the just quiet, I'm not maybe killing as many people of the first one.
Yeah.
And at some points, like, I don't know if it feels as balanced in
Well, I mean, it was
in two.
the part that kind of spoke to me was when, you know, you're going around and you pick up the little sisters and you take them to gather Eve or Adam, and it was just every time I was like, all right, well, here's a wave of 8 to 12 enemies for the next 30 to 45 seconds. So when you go into a room and you're observing a combat scenario, like, it's fun to plan that out.
Yes.
There's less planning that goes into just a wave of enemies.
Right.
And I just, I will say the cool, having put the first 4 hours, the trap bullets, like the ones that you can set up on a perimeter, is like freaking incredible.
the trap bullets combined, hack a couple
setting those
turrets
up.
around.
Oh my God.
But then there's the cyclone trap, which when you get that to the second level of plasmid, and then you can toss another plasmid into it. So you have this trap on the ground.
Oh, I haven't gotten
that
there
if you
yet.
put electricity into it, they'll run into it, and then they'll be
That's
shot there on the
awesome.
ground. Once you get to kind of, especially those second levels of the plasmids in the game, the promise, as you were talking about, Abby, of what the first game had, there was that demo that Ken Levine would do where they were in Eve's garden, and it was a very dynamic combat scenario that I just never felt adept enough to pull off in the original Bioshock. I suddenly found myself doing in Bioshock 2, and that really sort of opened up the game for me. Like, hold on, I now have a hook in this game that eluded me before, and that it really started to carry me through Bioshock 2. It is more of a shooter. It doesn't have that, oh, wow, this world of Rapture is just blowing me apart. I want to solve this mystery. But it does seem to offer something up in lieu of those things. I think it was hopeless to try to recreate from the original Bioshock.
And I think, the idea that this game played it safe on the story a little bit was probably, I haven't finished it, so I can't comment on how the narrative completely lays out, but, based on what you said about it, like, I think that's, if they try to replicate a massive game-changing twist at the end, like, don't pull an M. Night Shyamalan. Like, you don't need a twist to have a twist. And I think the idea of playing it safe, playing up the combat, which was a strength in the first one, but wasn't quite there, I think that was smart. It's be interesting to see where they go from there.
Right.
There's
But
actually
if-
something
if
at the end
they
of the game
go.
that annoys me, and I can't talk about because I don't really want to spoil it for everybody because it's kind
yeah,
of cool, but then it's not cool.
I know what you're talking about, Abby.
Yeah, I know, right?
Let's be good
I
drug
like the
players.
first reader comment.
Yeah, let's
There's
read the
my
first reader
segue.
comment from Consuego. Oh, I like that. That's kind of clever. He did one of those.
We need to build tildes into our website.
For me, the first game was intriguing because I was always worried about when the next Big Daddy would show up. So now that you are a Big Daddy in this game, it kind of takes away that anxiety and fear for me. It's an interesting point. I don't know if that was so much the concern, and you addressed this, but that the Big Sister, which is kind of replacing the Big Daddy, doesn't have that same random appearance
Yeah.
as,
Yeah, you
as
know-
he did
you
in the
know
first
when
game.
she-
Like, except for the first two appearances are out of nowhere, and they're great. They're terrifying. The first time you see her, and the second time
Yeah.
the second fight is terrifying too. But after that, it's every time you clear the area, she's coming. And
Yeah.
if they just kept it random through the whole thing, then yeah, that would have helped a lot. I enjoyed being a Big Daddy. We kind of talked about this. Some people didn't like being slow and hulking and stuff.
You're not that slow.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you get speed boost right away, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird. That she just made you
also,
fast.
well,
but-
it's also, I never really felt like I was a Big Daddy, drill notwithstanding. There's that point where you're running into more and more splicers that have weaponry. And if I wasn't on my toes, 3 shots from 3 different angles, and I'm dead. I mean, that sense of invincibility of the Big Daddies I played against in the first Bioshock, I never have felt like, I actually rose to that level of skill or just strength.
And they do a good job of reminding you that, the last time we all played Bioshock was at the end when we were all powerful. You walk into a room and you just ruin everyone. And that was a lot of fun, but the beginning of that game, the first couple times you encounter a Big Daddy, you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
And I like the second time I encountered a Big Daddy, like I poorly planned. I switched the wrong plasmids like 3 different times, and all of a sudden I'm like in a Vita chamber, and it was fun to sort of have that reminder that these guys will whoop you if you haven't planned properly.
Yeah, I even did this in the second Bioshock because ever so often I was just switching to the wrong plasmid. It is the worst feeling in the world when you inadvertently just kind of toss hypnotize.
I always
At
think
a Big Daddy.
telekinesis. I'm like,
I know what
I blew wind in
Because
it.
that
Great.
first attack on a Big Daddy is really your make or break.
Yes.
Because you're going to piss him off, and you've somehow stymied him so that you can get the jump on and get some damage.
I like meant to shoot the water to electrify it. Instead, I just tossed some telekinesis bullets and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It's like I threw a mattress at a Big Daddy.
exactly.
That was good going.
He just caught it and ripped it.
Now let's just chat for one moment. Could this game ever have matched Bioshock? I mean, was that hope of the experience, of the thrill and the fun and the mystery and the magic of the first one, was that just never something that the team could accomplish? And do you think they even tried to bother to do that, or did they wisely, as you kind of pointed out, just kind of move in a new and different direction?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a milestone of a game. I mean, it's in setting and the way the narrative's told and everything, that they really didn't have a chance. Although all I could think about was like Godfather 2. Like every time I was thinking about sequels and like what makes great sequels, that was the first thing that came to mind in this case. And that the reason is because of the story.
Well, I think you're not.
And the
gonna
way they
get
told
that-
it, the
yeah.
narrative is different.
But you're not going to get that scare from Bioshock back
Right.
because you can't.
And that's
You
the thing.
can't
That's
be
why
that,
like you're
because then it's already kind of telepathed everything
Right.
there is in the world to scare you. So I mean, the other tack is to take the combat and make something that's kind of fleshed out with it, and I think they did that.
Yeah, unless they wanted to pull like a Lost World and like, oh, there's this other city. Over here.
I mean,
Site B.
I think given all the problems that awaited them by trying to make a sequel to Bioshock, they negotiated them probably as effectively as any dev team could.
Sure.
That, it's
To pull this off is really
Yeah, and that's the
impressive,
thing, too.
considering
It's like, it's
how
a good-
much of a failure this could have been.
Right.
How
Yeah,
much, like,
that's true.
I think everyone was, I think everyone's pretty happy that it's really good.
Yeah.
It's not Bioshock, but because most of us were kind of expecting, oh god, like I mean, when you heard multiplayer, when you heard multiple dev teams working on different parts of the game, there were a lot of moving pieces, and even the marketing was sort of weird. As we all had a weird feeling about it going into it, and I'm happy it is
I
as it
actually
is.
haven't gotten a chance to play the multiplayer yet because obviously the game is dropping today.
Yeah,
as we speak.
As we speak, really.
Yeah.
So I haven't. So I don't know if you have anything to share about that because.
I mean, you're obviously a hardcore multiplayer fan, and a hardcore multiplayer shooter fan, so I'd be interested to see what your take is on it. I felt that I don't play a lot of shooters, and I was really good at it, which indicates to me that
that
it's
a bad
not
sign?
for it's not for hardcore shooter fans.
To me, it sounds like when you were talking about that, at least in terms of, because I'm very much like you, Jake, that I liked Uncharted 2's multiplayer because it offered something that was different enough that I felt that I was kind of on an even skill level with everyone else playing it. And that's why I liked it. Whereas, I mean, no one I know that's a hardcore shooter fan really appreciated Uncharted 2's multiplayer.
Is there enough, as someone who's not even interested in being able to play a multiplayer shooter that I possibly would be good at compared to other people, is there a narrative reason to play it? Like, is it interesting enough to mess
That was like
with?
the biggest thing that I was impressed with that they decided to give it that kind of narrative hook. Which when I heard multiplayer, I was like, and then they were like the setting, Civil War. I was like, okay, you got me. And it is interesting to play it in that sense. I mean, the best mode by far is Capture the Little Sister, which
Is it like Capture the
it's
Flag?
basically the Capture the Flag, but she's the flag. And
terrifying rendition of
it
Capture the
is
Flag.
it is horrific. I mean, it is like when you go on up and grab her and she screams, it literally like tears your heart out. it makes you feel awful, which is amazing. That it's just capture the flag, but you feel really great.
Now, are they little sisters like the possessed little sisters, or just little girls?
Little sisters.
Okay,
And
that's good. Yeah.
You're not running up stealing
Is
little
it,
girls.
is it a playground atmosphere?
I don't want to
Is
feel
it,
like a missionary from Idaho or anything like
Do you
that.
have to throw them in the back of your van?
You don't have to.
It's an option.
Well, good. Jake, thank you so much for taking on that horrible burden of reviewing Bioshock 2. Of course, now you and Patrick can sit down and talk about what happens when you don't give a 5 out of 5 to a game.
Yeah.
Because it's all there. Actually, kudos to some of the people on our website, because after 2 obnoxious pages of people griping about your review, Jake, a lot of people came on saying, you're being a bunch of idiots griping about this review. And so to all of you there, I tip my hat. Now let's move to the question of the week. The limits of good versus evil.
That's epic.
This is a big
Brought
question.
to you by 19th century German philosophy. No, this is actually from our user Scooter Jess, who's kind of like Nietzsche or Schopenhauer, but not. I absolutely loved Mass Effect 2, but the morality system got me thinking. It makes me wonder why games seem to be so cut and dry about what constitutes good and evil in their games. Choices in real life are rarely ever so black and white, and people often disagree on what is right and wrong. Do you think that something that is as malleable as morality in real life can ever be equally flexible in video games? I like this question.
With a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like this one.
Well, we got into it over Mass Effect 2 as well, because there were points where I was choosing, basically the conversation that got me Paragon points, but I didn't feel very good about the decision that I had made.
And I do think that why they called it Paragon and Renegade
because it's not good and evil.
Yeah, they wanted a little bit of gray, and I think they wanted some cover.
They may have wanted to do that. That doesn't change it.
Really
and
change it.
that's really probably like my. And I ran into this, just the last time I was playing Mass Effect 2. It was so frustrating. Was that I started playing as Paragon, and then I was like, screw it. I want to be the jerk, and I want to push people around, and then occasionally I'll be good. I'm gonna kind of flip the way I usually play, and then
keep everyone on their toes.
Yeah,
you might be good today.
Depending on how I woke up. And did I have a dream in Rapture? And then what ended up happening was that because I switched. If you don't have enough points, you don't get access to dialogue choices. So as a result of me switching, I kind of got neutral for a while. So there were several times where I couldn't access either the Paragon or the Renegade option, but they're still there and they're just grayed out. It's just like,
and they're kind of taunting you.
You haven't
been
been bad
decided.
enough. And I think they kind of write themselves into a corner by just even identifying it as one or the other. Like I think it would be much cooler if it was sort of just, there are dialogue options, and it's
right there under the surface. How that's going to impact. Like you really only learn your lesson later on in the game.
Exactly. I understand why game designers do it because it's much easier to program a good versus evil karma and those kind of systems. But I think truly the more interesting way, and hopefully we'll see more games do if they aren't just doing like achievement pandering for good versus evil, is just. Here are the options, and I don't know. We'll see what happens. And I think that's more interesting.
Stop making the top one good and the bottom one evil, because then I don't pay attention. Because I'm like, that's the one that I have to choose, and I don't actually think about the choice that I'm making. I'm like, well, I am playing a Paragon character, so I probably should choose the top one, and it actually takes me out of that equation.
The writing
I'm
should
not
speak
thinking
for
about
it, yeah.
that.
Although there are times where you have a decision. I've had this a couple times where I'm like, I think that's actually a pretty reasonable assessment of that, and then it'll be like Renegade. I'll be like, wait a minute, like that's not the game deciding.
Because everyone kind of wants to be Han Solo. Like you want to be the jerk, but you want to
be
save the
Humphrey
galaxy.
Bogart. Yeah. So you want to be Casablanca. Now, I do think it's interesting that when you start to go into the morality thing, that does open up this interesting world where video games can go. But then, it is a little bit strange. Let's say that some hot button issue, abortion, gay marriage, somehow is able to be incorporated into a game. And it's got a morality system, then you suddenly have sort of the game developers tipping their hand onto what they think is right or wrong on a controversial subject. I mean, right now we've kept it so comfortably in the realm of just sort of the fantasy and like nothing is dealing with stuff that feels too present in terms of the player's life. But if we want to see the games progress, we can start to, this could get into some very, very interesting and dicey territory.
But then you get into Patrick's point where, so then take away whether one is good or bad, but just have it affect where the story goes.
It's a consequence.
Or how, how your experience changes, and not actually have it tell you, well, you're a bad person.
One way that I think it could be addressed that the oft-delayed other Obsidian game, Alpha Protocol, is addressing is that if I look at a dialogue choice, especially when I was like sort of doing Paragon leaning, if I sat and thought about it, I would always move away from the evil choice if I had a chance to sit and really examine my options and be like, yeah, all right, I'm going to be the good guy. In Alpha Protocol, they give you about 3 to 4 seconds to make a choice. There is a meter going down, and if you don't make a choice, whatever you've landed on is the one that gets picked. And so I think the idea of sort of pushing the player, make a choice. Like in real life, you don't get a minute to sit and mull over what you want to do. And I think that might, if they don't want to, remove good versus evil, I think getting people to make more impulsive choices would still get you to kind of accomplish a similar result.
This is actually, obviously we're going to be talking about this on the show probably in a week or two, but Heavy Rain has taken that and done something very interesting where when the choices are made available, the choices aren't presented equitably.
Yes.
It's clearly trying to push you towards a snap judgment decision where there might be a wiser, more cool-headed decision that's almost obscured and is shaking. It's an interesting technique that I don't think could necessarily fit comfortably into our traditional BioWare style morality games, but there might be a good middle ground that we can reach with this.
I'm a panicker. Now I'm nervous. I am too. It's like every time, I get when there's time sequences in games, or whenever I panic. It's just flat out
I hate time sequences.
I know, I do too.
Having said that, I survived everything in Heavy Rain. It was just, was thrilled by it.
Constant stress, though.
But it is, that is a game that I can't play for too long because my nerves are absolutely frayed at the end of some of it. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much. And obviously, by saying that, Heavy Rain, none of you guys have got a chance to play it.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Yes, and for our viewers who are curious about what we have to say, I want to let our panelists soak in this game because there's more to talk about with that.
2 weeks, Adam.
Any game I've seen this year. Also, on a final note, DICE. It's going to be on our website all week long next week. If you don't know what it is, the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences puts on this very, very cool. It's like TED for games, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
All the smart people get together that don't even work in games and talk about things that are related to games.
Less about promoting what you got coming out.
So we have all the speakers. We are going to be recording them, getting them up on the website all week long next week. If you have any interest in designing games, if you have any interest in being philosophical about games, if you really like games and you don't just want to gripe about something getting a 4 when you thought it deserved a 5, I think that you would really do yourself a favor by checking out all these videos that will be up there. I will be there with Patrick as well as Andrew Pfister. We'll have some interesting interviews. And hopefully we're going to be doing a special field trip version of our show from DICE as well.
In a hot tub.
You know what? I'll be on the side wearing maybe a bathrobe or something.
Whatever.
And I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be on a beach, so you can enjoy your little sausage fest in the hot tub.
Oh. Fine.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Hater.
Yeah. Anyway, on that note, yes, please check out our DICE stuff. We will also be having a regular feedback on next week, so don't think that we're abandoning you as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.